how to start a podcast in 2020. This is the video you guys have requested, so here we go. In today's video, we're going to talk about the gear that you need. We're going to talk about how to get it to all the most important podcasting platforms, and we're going to talk about marketing your podcast. All that is straight ahead in today's video. Hey guys, I'm Steve Freeman. Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to talk about how to start a podcast in 2020. Before we dive in, don't forget to drop a like on the video, and if you have some thoughts about everything that we talk about today, please don't hesitate, leave a comment in the comment section below, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. All right, how to start a podcast in 2020. Before we do that, let me say this. Maybe we should ask the question, should you start a podcast in 2020? Now, I firmly believe in podcasts. I started mine a little over a year ago, and I don't want to say that I started it as a joke, but I started it more for just me, and I didn't really understand what I was getting into, okay? So I want to communicate with you guys exactly what I found, and that is starting a podcast. If you're going to take it seriously and you're going to do it and you're going to do it to the best of your ability and you want to provide value to people, what I didn't know was that it is a full-time job. Seriously. From the planning aspect to lining up interviews to just recording the podcast, editing the podcast, uploading the podcast, marketing the podcast once it's done. We're going to talk about all of that in today's video. But I want you to understand that it is a commitment. It is not something that's, oh, I'm going to start a podcast. It is something that, like I said, the best way I can put it, it is a full-time job. So if you're thinking about doing it, think again. Make sure that it's really something that you want to do, that you are passionate about, that you have a message that you want to get out. Make sure that it's something that you can dedicate the appropriate time to making something really, really good. So, should you start a podcast in 2020? I don't know. That is up to you. I think you should. I think any business owner out there, I think any artist, I think anybody that has an interest, especially in a niche subject, I think if you have something to offer, if you have a voice, if you have something you want to put out there, or even if it's an interest base, if it's just a hobby or something that you find interesting that you want to create some sort of a community around, I think podcasting is the way to go. I also think that podcasting is the future. There are more and more and more people listening to podcasts. People are dumping radio. People are dumping satellite radio for podcasts. And I know in my own experience, I've been very fortunate. My podcast in the last year has grown, and it's now in Apple's top 200 podcasts. And we're creating an amazing community. So I love it. I love doing it. I love producing it. I love everything that's involved with doing it. But I want you to know, doing it with the right commitment level is a full-time job. So if you're going to do it, make sure you take it seriously. All right, now that you've made the decision that yes, I should start a podcast and I'm going to do it, the first subject that always comes up is gear. We're going to talk about the gear that you need. We're going to talk about microphones, and we're going to talk about recording equipment. How do you record your podcast? The first thing we're going to talk about is microphones. The first microphone I want to talk about seems to be everybody's favorite, and I know it's certainly one of my favorites, and that is the Shure SM7B. Now, the B in that stands for broadcasting. The Shure SM7B has been used in broadcasting platforms for many, many, many years. Radio stations, satellite radio, you've all seen the Shure SM7B. Now, in previous videos, especially when I'm in the studio, I've talked about how much I love the Shure SM7B, even for vocals. I can't tell you the number of platinum albums I've produced using a Shure SM7B on the vocals. Michael Jackson recorded all of the vocals for the Thriller album on a Shure SM7B. That's how good of a microphone it is. The reason that I like the Shure SM7B is because I know exactly what I can do with it in post. It's not something that has so much characteristics to it straight from your voice into the microphone, into your DAW or whatever it is that you're recording. I like that it's just its own sound, and then I know what to do with it in post to get it to sound exactly the way that I want it. It's not really that much of a flavored microphone, if you will, like some of the others. The Shure SM7B comes in at $399. I do want to say I'm using all of these from Sweetwater. This is not a sponsored video. Sweetwater has sponsored videos in the past. This is not. I get my gear at Sweetwater or Vintage King, and I love the guys at Sweetwater. They have great quality stuff, and they ship it really fast, and they get it to you. So if you want to get your podcast started, you want to be able to go online, order it, and get it. So everything that I'm featuring today is from Sweetwater, but it is not sponsored, and there's no affiliate junk, none of that, okay? So the Shure SM7B is $399. Some people think that's an expensive microphone. If you're in the audio world, you know $399 is not really expensive for a microphone, especially a workhorse microphone like the Shure SM7B. I have used the SM7B on my podcast, but I've also used 3 other microphones that we're going to talk about. But if you want to go kind of straight to the top of the list, and you want that microphone that you know is just going to deliver time after time after time after time, the Shure SM7B is a very, very good value, and it's great for podcasting. You can't go wrong with an SM7B. The next microphone I want to talk about is the Rode Procaster. Now, I've got one right here, and as a matter of fact, I have 3 of them in my podcasting studio, which is right next to my office, which is where we are now. And I will tell you, I went with these in the new podcast studio for a reason. And that is because I use the Rodecaster Pro to record my podcast. I feel that the Rode Procaster microphone, I feel that it pairs better with the Rodecaster Pro than the SM7B or a couple of the other microphones that we're going to talk about. The other thing that I do like about the Rode Procaster is that it comes in at $299. So it's $100 cheaper than an SM7B. And I got to tell you, it's already got the built-in filter here in the front. It is a front address microphone. I always love it when you're watching videos or watching something and people are talking into it like this. No, the SM7B, this microphone, as well as the other microphones we're going to talk about, they are front address microphones. So that matters. If you are talking into your microphone like this, or you've got it like that, it's not going to sound right. It is a front address microphone. It's got the windscreen built in. It is a great sounding mic. If you're thinking about using something like the Rodecaster Pro, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, it pairs really great with it. There's already a preset in the Rodecaster Pro for this microphone, so you can dial it right in, hit that button, and it sets a preset that already sounds phenomenal, baked right in with this microphone. This is the Rode Procaster, and it comes in at $299. The next microphone I want to talk about, I have used quite a bit on my podcast, and that is the ElectroVoice E27. Now, the E20 has been a broadcasting standard at radio stations for years and years and years. Back when I was in the radio business a very long time ago, no matter what radio station I went to all over the country, when I got into the studio, there was always an EV RE20. They're just known for their dynamics. They're known for having that big bolsterous sound, although you don't get that with just the microphone, okay? That's a lot of post-processing and DBX compressors and EQs that go into giving you that, what they call radio voice. But the RE27 I have used on my podcast for a while. I will say it is not my favorite. I like it. It tends to me to be a little thin and a little on the bright end. To me, there's not as much of a spectrum there, a full-bodied sound. And for it to be the most expensive microphone we're going to talk about today, the ElectroVoice RE27 comes in at $499. So it's $100 more than the Shure SM7B, and it's $200 more than the Rode Procaster. I got to tell you, it's not $100 better than the SM7B, and it is certainly not $200 better than the Rode Procaster. Now, there's going to be a lot of people watching this video that will probably sound off in the comments section and totally disagree with me. That's totally fine. Guys, here's the one thing I want you to take away from microphones, okay? They are a personal preference thing. You have to find what sounds best on your voice, and that's the microphone you go with. It doesn't matter if it's a $200 microphone, a $50 microphone, or a $5,000 microphone. Whatever sounds best on your voice is the microphone that you should use. I'm not saying that the RE27 is not a great microphone. I think it's great for certain people. It's just not really great for my voice. For my voice, I prefer the SM7B, and like I said, I chose to put 3 Rode Procasters in the new studio because I felt it fit in better with the flow and the other equipment that I'm using. Plus, I think it sounds great on my voice. So the RE27, it's a great microphone. It's very well made. It's a heavy son of a gun, I can tell you that. But it's a great microphone, and I would highly suggest maybe testing it out. But like I said, the most important thing to know when choosing a microphone for your podcast is what matches and sounds best with your voice. The next microphone I want to talk about, I have, but I'm sorry I left it in my recording studio because I put it in a bag and I forgot that it's there because I take it with me. It's what I use when I'm on the road. So I can't take my SM7B, or I've got the podcast studio over there and I don't want to take one of those, and it requires an interface because you have to have the XLR cable and all of that. So what I used for a long time, and many of you in some of my podcast videos, you've seen me use the Rode Procaster USB microphone. Now, if you don't want to go through the route of having preamps or compressors or any of that stuff, you want to make it really easy. You want a very high quality sounding microphone that you can plug directly into your Mac laptop or your Windows-based laptop, and you're going to use something like Logic, or you're going to use something like Adobe Audition and just record straight into that software. I got to be honest with you. You can't really go wrong with the Rode Procaster. From an affordability standpoint, it's the cheapest microphone that we're going to talk about, coming in at, what is it, $229. It comes with its own stand. It comes with its own USB cable. You are ready to start podcasting out of the box. Like I said, if you're going to use Audition, or you're going to use Logic, or even Pro Tools, any DAW software-based computer program to record your audio into, you can plug this USB straight into your computer and you are ready to go. And I can tell you that it sounds great, especially if you're going into Audition, which is what I used for a long time. There are a lot of different presets. We're not going to get into all that. Maybe I'll do another video on that. But there are a lot of presets, especially in Audition. There's a podcast voice preset. If you record using the Rode Procaster USB microphone, and then you apply that preset and tweak it a little bit, your podcast is going to sound as good as anything else out there. Like I said, when I'm on the road and I know that I've got podcast episodes to record and stay on my schedule, it's the mic that I take with me because it's easy. I can open up my MacBook Pro, plug this thing in, I can open Audition or Logic or Pro Tools, and I can record straight in via the USB, and it sounds phenomenal. So if you're sitting there and you're going, okay, there's so many different options when it comes to microphones, I just need to get started. In all honesty, that's where I would start. I mean, the Rode Procaster is $229. It's USB. You can take it anywhere with you, and it sounds phenomenal. If you're just starting out, maybe that's where you want to start. Get your feet underneath you, really get the podcast started, figure out how you want it to flow, how you want it to sound, and then maybe upgrade and go with either the RE27 or the Rode Procaster or the Procaster or the Shure SM7B. All of these are great options, okay? But I have to tell you, just starting out, there is nothing wrong with going with the Rode Procaster USB. It's an absolutely great mic. It's going to sound great for your podcast. And there are a lot of top podcasts out there that are using the USB microphones. Now, I picked the Rode because I'm a Rode fan. I use their studio microphones when I'm recording records and producing records. I love their products, okay? Again, hashtag not an ad. I just love their products. I think what they do very well. And they make microphones. Other than the Rodecaster, which we're going to talk about, until that came along, Rode was a microphone company. That's it. They don't focus on making all this other stuff. They focus on making great microphones, and that's why I suggest them. Now, I think Blue and Yeti, and there's a ton of other USB microphones out there that people make, other manufacturers make, and some of them sound phenomenal. Some of them don't sound so good. What I wanted to do in this video is give you examples of what I use. I don't like to talk about or recommend products that I have never used. These microphones that we're talking about today, I own every single one of them. I've used every single one of them, and I know exactly what my thoughts on them are, and that's what I want to communicate with you guys. Again, as we wrap up talking about microphones, the most important thing to remember is that it doesn't matter if you have a $600 microphone or a $100 microphone, okay? It's what matches the best with your voice. All right, next up, we're going to talk about how to record the audio for your podcast. Now, I've used Pro Tools for years and years and years. You've also got Logic, you've got Adobe Audition, a lot of different software programs out there that you can record your audio into, and we're not going to go into all of them at all. I think the most important thing is that you use what you're most familiar with. If you're a computer and software-based person and you know Audition, or you know Pro Tools, or you know Logic, that's the program that I would use if I were you, because one of the things that you don't want to do is start getting into trying to learn a lot about something you don't already know, because then you just get frustrated. When you've decided that you're going to start the podcast and you want to do it, make it as easy on yourself as humanly possible, okay? Use the programs that you know. Use the things, I call it low-hanging fruit. Use what's at your immediate grasp and what the things that you know, so that you can get moving and get going and actually get started, because that's the most important thing. Now, there are some outboard gear that a lot of people use for their podcast. I was telling you a second ago, I happen to use the Rodecaster Pro. I've done a couple of different videos. You can check them out here on the channel of reviews and kind of some in-depth stuff on the Rodecaster Pro. I think that honestly, now that they've done the update and it's multi-track capable, I think it's the best all-in-one podcasting solution anywhere. Now, for my podcast, sometimes it's just me, sometimes I have 2 or 3 guests. So I needed something that was capable of having multiple channels and having multiple microphones, multiple signals, but also multi-track, so that I could break it out in post if my guest was speaking lower than I was, or I was speaking lower than a guest, that everything could be equalized on separate tracks and everything could apply different plugins or effects like multiprocessors or mastering effects to make sure that everything sounded right. In order to do that, I needed outboard gear to be able to have all of those different channels. When I saw that Rode was coming out with the Rodecaster Pro, I immediately got one. Matter of fact, I was one of the first people in the country to have it. I had it before it was multi-track. It's just a great piece of gear. Like I said, if you really want to go in depth on the Rodecaster Pro, check out one of the other 3 videos that I've got here on the channel about the Rodecaster Pro. But if you're thinking about having a more professional setup, a more professional sound, I cannot recommend the Rodecaster Pro enough. Now, it's not cheap. I believe the Rodecaster Pro comes in around $599, $600. But I will tell you that if you do go ahead and invest in something like the Rodecaster Pro, you're not ever going to need anything else. It records to micro SD on board, or you can connect it via USB straight to your computer and use it as an interface. You don't even have to record on board. It's just a great solution. It is literally all in the box. All you have to do is take it out, plug it in, plug your microphone in, and go. And I think that's simple. It's very lightweight. It's easy to take. I've taken it on the road with me before when I know I'm going to have guests on the podcast. I highly recommend the Rodecaster Pro. I know for a fact that a lot of other people use Zoom devices. Now, these things come in multi-channel, single channel. They've got all sorts of different things. If you're just starting out, I would recommend something like the Zoom H4n. I have one of those. I will say I've never used it. It looks really cool, and I probably need to find an excuse to use it, but I've never used it. It's still in the little plastic case that it came in, but it's a great solution. You can plug your microphone straight into it. It's going to record high-quality audio. It's not going to be any issue at all. The one thing about that is, though, I think the H4n comes in at like $329 or somewhere right in there. I've got a picture of it. You can look at it for sure and see. But when you're talking about spending $300, I would go ahead and spend $300 more and get the Rodecaster Pro, right? I mean, it just, if you're really going to take this thing seriously and you're really going to do it right, then do it right. But if all you can afford is something like the H4n, then and you want to and need to and have to be able to record externally and not straight to your computer, then it's a great solution. And it's not, I mean, it's not too bad of a price. But if you're just starting out, maybe that's an option for you that you want to consider. The last source that I want to talk about is not something I recommend, but I know that people are doing it. You know, and there are a lot of different people out there in videos that I've seen, and they say, look, the important thing is to just get started and use what you have. And everybody's got a smartphone. I know several people that record their podcast on their iPhone or on their Android device. Most of the people I know have iPhones, and some people are connecting their AirPods via Bluetooth because the microphone on the AirPods are a lot better than the microphone on the phone itself. But I know a lot of people that use AirPods or still the plug-in headphones with the built-in microphone, and they record their podcast straight to voice memo or another audio recording program or app that you can put on your smartphone. I know a lot of people that do that. So there is something to say about just getting started. Is it going to give you the best quality that you can possibly have? No. Is it going to allow you to get started right away, to get you in a habit of doing your podcast and preparing for it? Yes. So there is something to say for that. You know, like I said, I know several people that do that. It is an option. Get it out and try it. You've probably got a smartphone. You're probably watching this video on a smartphone. You probably have AirPods, or you've at least got the headphones with the built-in mic jack. Do some testing, pre-record, see what it sounds like. If you get in a quiet enough environment, it may not sound too bad. Plus, if you take that audio, and I'm sure there's apps and other things like that that you can even enhance the sound even better than that, or ship that to, you know, save it as an MP3 and send it to one of your audio programs like Audition, and you can play with the EQ and all that. You can probably get it sounding pretty decent. I also know people who get the Lightning adapters to where you can plug a USB microphone into your cell phone. Okay, there are a lot of different options, and I'm not going to say that this option is right or this option is wrong. Again, what option is it that makes it right for you? What gives you the sound that you want to have for your podcast? Maybe that's the sound that you want. Maybe you want that real raw sound. Maybe that's your audience. That really is the most important thing. Again, going back to talking about microphones. What works for you is the best thing for you. All right, so you've made the decision that you should start a podcast. You've made a decision on what microphone you want to use and how you're going to record your audio, and you've recorded your first podcast. Now, how do you get it on Apple Podcasts, on iHeartRadio, on Stitcher, on radio.com? How do you get it to all those different places? Well, you need a podcast distribution platform. Now, there are a lot of them out there, and they range from prices from free all the way to what I use, which is about $250 a month. And you're probably going, holy hell, what are you talking about? I'll explain that in just a second. When we get into talking about distributing your podcast, this is the most important step in the entire process. If you cannot get your podcast out and available and in front of people, then it doesn't really matter what microphone you're using. It doesn't matter how you're recording the audio for your podcast. So it is important. I know there are a lot of services out there that say they distribute your podcast for free. If you're doing this as a business, you're doing this to take it very seriously. What's the old saying? You get what you pay for. I just don't believe in the free platforms. I know there's Anchor out there. All of them have different pay levels. What I want to talk about is what I use. Again, I've never used Anchor. I've never used any of those other distribution platforms for podcast. I went straight to Libsyn. Libsyn is my favorite. Again, hashtag not an ad. It's just what I use. I have found that the people at Libsyn are amazing. Rob, the VP of Podcaster Relations, I can email him right now. He'll email me back if I have questions. It's a great platform. They are the biggest by far. Plus, they gave me the availability to be able to get my podcast on every single platform that I wanted it on. My podcast is available anywhere and everywhere you get podcasts. Everywhere. They make it super simple. And when you get into this kind of thing, especially when you're starting, the simplicity of it is very important because you've put in all this hard work of thinking of, okay, what am I going to do my podcast on? Is it interesting? You've thought about topics. You've thought about the set. You've thought about the microphone. You've thought about the production. Now it's time to get it out to people. That needs to be as simple and as easy as humanly possible. And Libsyn was that easy for me and still is. Now, I started out with Libsyn's basic plan, and then I kind of escalated up through the ranks as my podcast grew. Now I use their elite program called Libsyn Pro. Now, Libsyn Pro is a little bit more expensive, but the reason for that is because I actually now have a network with Libsyn, right? So I'm going to be adding several different podcasts from several different podcast hosts to our podcasting network. So that's why I think I pay $250 a month for Libsyn Pro for them to host all of our network's podcasts and the podcasts that we'll have coming in the future. There are a lot of different features as far as advertising, ad placements, a lot of different, you get a special rep. A lot of different things are different with Libsyn Pro than just regular Libsyn, but you're just getting started. You don't need that level. You need just the basic regular plan with Libsyn to get you started. Their dashboard is extremely easy to use. Uploading your content, doing your ID3 tags, and then your delivery destinations are a separate place on the Libsyn dashboard. They will set you up, walk you through getting your podcast on Apple Podcast, on iHeartRadio, on Google Podcast, on Stitcher, on radio.com, everywhere and anywhere that podcasts are available. They make it very simple and very, very, very easy to know how to get those affiliations set up with those other podcasting platforms because they've already got the whole system right there for you under the Destinations tab. All you have to do is fill out the information and they make it super simple. Guys, that's what I want to say really overall is you want this to be as simple of a process as humanly possible. Can you go with the free source to distribute your podcast? Absolutely. But the minute you start to grow, because if you're taking this as serious as you say that you want to take it, you're going to want to grow this thing. And as it starts to grow, those free platforms are going to outgrow. Then there comes problems in redirecting your podcast because they don't have the ability to have the bandwidth to have a larger podcast. Look, I know some of this is like months and months and months, maybe years down the road for you, but I'm telling you, you will be better off if you just start out with a platform like Libsyn that will allow you to grow as big as you want to go. Like from just starting out with one listener all the way up to somebody like Joe Rogan, who has millions and millions and millions of listeners. Joe Rogan's podcast is with Libsyn. I think my podcast right now, we're right around 200,000 people a month. I don't have any problems. It's just as simple as when I had one listener. So yes, there are other podcasting platforms out there. I'm not going to say that any of them are good. I'm not going to say any of them are bad because I've never used them. I went straight to Libsyn because they came highly recommended. Like I said, they are the oldest, they are the biggest, and in my opinion, they are the best by far. So please check out Libsyn. Again, hashtag not an ad. I just am telling you guys about the things and the services and the products and the gear that I personally use because I have hands-on experience with them and I can tell you what that experience is like. All right, the last thing we're going to talk about is how to market your podcast, right? Because if you're going to have a podcast, it's pretty dang important to make sure that you get the word out there about your podcast. Now, the easiest way to do that is Facebook and Instagram, LinkedIn, yes, the dreaded social media platforms. I get it, I understand it, I hate them just as much as you guys do, but that again is low-hanging fruit. If you've got anywhere from 100 to 10,000 to 25,000 likes on Facebook or fans on Facebook or followers on Instagram or Twitter, you immediately want to recruit that audience. That is what I call your low-hanging fruit. So that's where you want to start. I also want to say something that I have found to be really, in all honesty, more truthful than anything that I've ever heard. I was on a phone call with Rob, the VP of Podcaster Relations with Libsyn. We were talking about marketing podcasts. And he made a comment to me that I thought was very profound. And he said that the content itself was the best marketing tool for your podcast. You know, you've probably watched a lot of videos. I mean, everybody's coming out now with their how to get more views on YouTube videos. Okay, everybody's talking about that. How to get more views, how to get more listeners, how to get more streams. And they talk about social media. When in all honesty, it really comes down to the content. If you are making quality content that provides value that people find either informative or entertaining, you're going to do well with your podcast. But you've got to create some sort of value. Yes, you can post about it on Facebook. You can tweet about it on Twitter. You can post about it on Instagram wall or your Instagram stories. And yes, try to bring those people in. But if you don't have something of value and substance and quality when you get those people to your podcast, it's not going to last long. And the way to really build a podcast is to build a community, is to build a following. And when you start putting out content that people really care about, and you start being a voice of reason, or you start providing some sort of informative value that people want to come back time after time, episode after episode, they're going to start doing the one thing that it takes more than anything, and I unfortunately have to tell you, is grassroots. There is nothing more valuable than one person that got something of value from your podcast telling somebody else. That's the best way to grow your podcast. Now, yeah, of course, you have to start on social media because you have to get that initial group of people in. But I like what Rob said, and I have to agree with him, and I think the same thing goes for YouTube. I think the same thing goes for anything that you're doing. If you're creating something of value, something that people appreciate, you're not going to have a problem growing your podcast or your YouTube channel or your social media for that fact. I think you really want to sit down and figure out the meat of the podcast. Is the podcast delivering value? Is it entertaining for whatever reason? Because you may not be doing it as a business thing. You may be doing it as purely a hobby thing. I recently had a friend of mine in Cincinnati that said, I want to start 2 podcasts. I said, dude, this is a full-time job, pick one. One of the things he wanted to do a podcast on was a complete passion of his, hockey. And the other one was what he actually does for a living. And I said, that's where you want to focus, because that's what you're really, truly passionate about. That's what you get on and you wear every day. Do the thing that is going to lead to some sort of value for other people. If you can deliver that value, you're going to be able to grow your podcast. Now, yes, you can utilize social media advertising. You can buy social media Facebook ads. You can buy Instagram story ads. You can buy LinkedIn ads. You can buy Twitter ads. You can buy all this different stuff to promote your podcast. I will tell you that I don't think it works. I've done it a couple of times for mine when I've had a special guest that I wanted to make sure people knew that I had coming on that may be a little bit beyond my social media reach. It didn't really work. it was kind of a waste of money. I talked to Rob at Libsyn about that as well, and he said they've done extensive research on this, and it shows that paying for advertising for podcast doesn't really work. Don't waste your money. Let the content be the leading content marketing factor, okay? The better the content, the more people are going to listen to it. The better the content, more people are going to want to share it with other people. If you are providing something of value or something that entertains people, something that they enjoy, I can promise you're going to grow your podcast a lot further than paying for Facebook ads or Instagram ads or anything like that at all. So I say save your money. Sure, go pick that low-hanging fruit with the people that you already have an established connection with on social media. But beyond that, don't worry about paid advertising right now. Focus on creating great quality and valuable content. You do that, and I promise you will grow your podcast. So we've walked through today. Should you start a podcast? I think you should. We've talked about the gear that you'll need, the different microphone options. We talked about options that I've used. There are a lot of different options out there, and it's kind of like going down a rabbit hole. You can get lost, you can get confused, and you don't want to do any of that, right? You want to get started. You've got a great idea. You've got something of value that you want to get out to people. You want to get started. Don't get lost in what gear to get, how you should just get started. And we wrapped up talking about distribution platforms. I use Libsyn. I can't recommend them enough. They've been great to me. They've been great for my podcast. And now as we're even growing our podcast network, they've just been amazing. Marketing your podcast, the content is the marketing. The better the content, the bigger the audience. I can promise you that. I'm going to say that again. The better the content, the bigger the audience. Find out what you want to do your podcast on and do it to the best of your ability. Do the right research. Really put the time, effort, energy, and passion and expertise that you have into your podcast. You don't need to buy Facebook ads. You don't need to buy Instagram ads. You don't need to do all that. The better the content, the bigger the audience. All right, guys, that's going to wrap up this video, how to start a podcast in 2020. I hope you got something out of it. If you did, please don't forget, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and if you've got other platforms, other podcast distribution platforms that you've used that you like I like Libsyn, feel free to put those things down in the comments. If you've got another setup, a different microphone that you like, or a different preamp that you like, or a different DAW, feel free to put all of your success stories or even some things that you've learned about starting your podcast in the comments section below. Guys, thank you so much for joining me for another video. And speaking of podcast, be sure, subscribe to the Steve Freeman podcast. It's available everywhere you get your podcast. New episodes every Thursday morning at 8 a.m. Central. Guys, until the next time, keep being creative, keep pushing the boundaries, and there's nothing wrong with being independent. See you in the next one.